In this image, this is a frame from Man of Steel. I have a number of film images in here, but this is a case of closure, and you're going to see kind of the strength of dominant and subordinate eye lines, and I'll show you that here too, if I can draw up on the board. In this image, of course, a little bit higher and in the middle is Superman in here, but Superman is pretty much looking straight forward, right? He's pretty much looking straight forward in here. Okay, and then we get this character over here. Now there's a continuous line over here, so it closes the frame. And then we have the other person over here. Okay, now what's happening is we have this strong eye line between these two. This person is looking over this way, this person is looking over this way. And just like we were looking at before, when you have two of those things combined, like the contour and the tonal quality, when you have two combined, it doubles it up. So it makes this, because she's staring at her and she's staring at her directly, it makes this eye line dominant. Now we have this as closure. This is our closure right there. But you can see how strong this eye line is. He's secondary. Even though he's looking almost straight into camera, he's just secondary compared to them in terms of dominance and subordination. You see that? They really steal the show here. Here's another example. This is an example from, there's a couple things going on here in this image. And this is from Top Hat with Fred Astaire. And so, but he uses a strong axis. His dancing in this sequence, he's dancing with a bunch of other male dancers, and they're all wearing the same outfit. So how do you tell one over the other? Not in this image, but how do you tell one apart from the others? It was his axis. Okay. So if I'm drawing. If I'm drawing him in here, he's at an angle like this, right? So he has this strong axis line like this. And if you watch the movie, you'll see that he might be at an angle like this, and all of them wearing the same thing, they're all uniform. So compared to all of these, if you make these monotonous, he becomes very dynamic. So that axis line becomes very, very dynamic. Okay? Now there's other lines where two intersecting planes, that's this one. Okay? And then these are drawn lines with the poles, with the light posts, right? And then down here like this. Those are lines drawn on. Then we have the lights themselves. Those create closure. Because our eyes will connect the dots from dot to dot to dot to dot. You see? So we get that. We also get the other curved lines, there's variations on that theme. We get the line across here, and then one sweeping line down here. And then the clouds back here are tonal contrast again. So these lines are created by the tonal contrast of light to dark. So we have painted lines, we have intersecting lines, we have closure, we have axis, and then we have tonal contrast here. Multiple lines in this. And that's what kind of harmonizes this. It's interesting because the multiple uses of line in the same image, it's not totally overpowering as line. Because we're perceiving imaginary lines and then lines that are physically drawn, like the lines on the backdrop, but also lines created by tonal contrast over here as well. So, this variety of interpretations of line, it makes it a really strong design. Here's an example of the way that some of those work. Okay, we have yellow axis line. The others are drawn lines in there. The cyan, dots are creating closure, creating a movement in there. So those are the kinds of lines that they would use. And again, this might be the situation where he's always making his movement different than everybody else's. Okay? These are SR-71 pilots, and in this image, there's a number of lines going on. There's physical lines, there's implied lines, there's closure, and a sense of perspective. Now, there's a bit of a wide angle effect on this. It was shot with a wider angle lens, but there's linear effects that happen in here. And all in all, it keeps us moving through the image. And it kind of works out this way. I'll just kind of put what's dominant and subordinate in here and kind of play that out. Okay, so we have a horizon that's about a third up, something like this. We have this SR-71 that comes in like this and down. Okay. So again, you can see right on the nose here, and even this vertical stabilizer here, what ends up happening is when you see it at that angle, it appears like a line. This is the front view of this stabilizer, which is a plane like this. But from this angle, it appears like a line, and this appears like a line there. We have our horizon, two values, very close in value, but two different hues. Those can also create a line. Small telephone pole back there, little small vertical. Those are way back and subordinate. There's another line, the crack in the pavement closes off the bottom of the frame. So that keeps us in here, okay? That keeps us closed off in here. We have our largest pilot that sits here, or stands here. Okay, so he's standing here, just in front of this line, and he's got a long shadow that goes up this way. So that's creating a line. This is tonal contrast here. Okay, this is a pretty strong line in here in the pavement, but this is tonal contrast in here. This is a little shadowing effect in here, and this is a large shadow in here. So we get this kind of thing, and if you can see, this is really pointing right at him, okay? And then we get another one here. And the farther back they are, we've got a couple of them back here. One here. One back here. And his shadow merges with the first guy's shadow, pretty much. Got another one. Another one. And then a couple of them back in here. This guy's a little taller, closer. And then a few of them. This one just a little closer, and then another one back here. Now, we can also talk about rhythm too. And if all of these are like even, we'd have an even rhythm going across. We get the size differentiation, which makes this guy dominant because he's in the front. He's taller. Then we get this guy. But if you notice here too, the heads create closure. Okay, and all of them create this closure. Our eyes will connect the dots. They tend to. At the same time, each of these have little shadows, so they're all coming off the same thing like this. And their feet with the shadow, again, these are bits of closure. Now, the effect that these come down and back and these go up and back like this, it almost reads like perspective, almost like this. Almost like from the one guy here, there's the other guy back here, and then everybody else sits in this kind of a deeper perspective like that. Okay, so that's kind of the appearance of what goes on. So we have tonal contrast here that's creating the line. That's the shadow. We have tonal contrast here in this crack, which creates another line. We have closure that connects all these guys. And then we have the appearance of physical lines back here. So again, there's groupings of lines, and all their vertical axes are all pretty much the same in here, which creates this regularity, okay? It's not completely monotonous, but it's a regularity, a vertical regularity that makes this extreme diagonal so dynamic, okay? So this becomes dynamic and this becomes dynamic. It's pretty interesting what, when you kind of break these things down, you look at how the line's really affecting these things. This is from Touch of Evil. And of course we have eye lines and we have closure. That's what's going on in this image. All these characters, they're all looking at one another. The two in the front are looking at the guy with a hat on. And the guy in the back is also looking at the guy with a hat on. So you have three guys against one. And it's interesting about how it stages these people in a shot and creates closure with them and really tells the story just by positioning and lighting them. And their posture, He can tell the three guys, okay, you guys are thugs. And the other guys, he can tell him, okay, now you're scared of these guys. And stand there and be scared. And the other guys just stand there like you're in control. And now all of a sudden he's got the whole scene worked out. Okay? And you can see what's going on. The two on the right it's more of an intimate situation between the two because they're looking, the guy who's being questioned here, he has a direct, his eye line is going back to the guy on the right. And so they have a strong connection with that eye line, and the others create closure in there. There's also tonal contrast in the lines on the ceiling and stuff from the light coming in and things like that. There's also a line in the background on the wall, a shadowing effect, but that keeps this guy on the right. It keeps him it makes him dark over light, and also keeps this pretty dynamic. Okay. Here's an image that's it's just shot with a wide-angle lens. So what ends up happening is you have these converging lines, and they recede dramatically. Okay, they go in a real. These lines go in a real. The longitudinal lines down the side of this car and the street. They go back in space real radically. They converge in an extreme manner. In this image, I just drew over the top of it, so you can see that convergence and how strong that is. If I take that convergence and basically shoot it with a different lens, you can see this is far less dynamic than the previous image. You see, because these lines don't converge at the same rate. So anytime you draw something and you kind of force the perspective or push these dynamic angles, they have a little bit more force like this than they do like this. Okay? It's another image from Man of Steel. And this is something, we create a situation I'll draw up here. We create a situation for an image like this. And again, in film, you only have a couple of seconds to tell your story. And every image needs to be telling a story and have some effect that's going to move you from one scene to the next, or one shot from the next to the next. So we have this guy that's pretty much in the middle. Okay? And again, what I was just talking about before, he's pretty much in the middle. His eye line is over this way, right? So he's looking this direction. Long line on his neck here, right? His chest is giving you this plane running this direction, okay? So there's a real strong direction between the frontal plane on his face and the contrast between this directional plane over, his chest here, right? So we get this contrast of an eye line compared to this plane, and that plays out real strong. Then we get this cape that goes at this angle, much like his eye line. His eye line's coming down here, his cape is coming down here, and the rain is coming at the same. And the rain is coming down perpendicular to his chest. Okay, and that becomes important. Here's secondary things back here. With a little perspective in this one. Okay, so these lines back here, we get a little bit of this. The most dynamic thing is all of this rain, and this is the one change. Okay, so this plane is different, and as we're going to talk about with. We talked about a little bit with shape, or we're going to go into shape next week, I guess. The way we look at shape has a contour, right? So, this might be a contour of Superman in this situation, right? But planes also have a directional impact. So we have the contour of a shape, but then we have the form of a shape that's also going to be, this way, in here and this. So our eye is going to roll along this contour of shapes. So if we have all of these lines going this way, and then this is kind of the defiant thing, he's really pushing his chest out there. That's why he looks like his chest is so big in this scene. Also, it is the lightest thing in there, okay? Along with the lighting on his face. So that's what's making this such a strong image in there, okay? And we get all these lines of the rain, his cape, they all work the same way. And yeah, this is all thought out because his cape is actually computer generated, and if it was actually flowing, it's not likely that it would flow at the same angle as the rain, okay? But it leads your eye right up into his face, and it sets you up that way. So these kinds of things are kind of get set up in the design of the shots. You can see how they work there. Below here, this is another image from Orson Welles' Touch of Evil. And again, I use these as example because there's so much storytelling that's provided just by the eye lines, okay, in a situation like this. There's a lot of tension, and it creates a lot of dynamic lines in here. So, you can tell who's who and what's actually going on in these scenes by how these lines actually work. Charlton Heston is looking over at Orson Welles, and the other guy in the middle is looking at Charlton Heston, and then there's another guy in the back who's looking on in the situation. So to kind of point it out and tell you the story of this, you can kind of see. I'll give you an example where we might have Charlton Heston over here, standing here. Orson Welles is large in the frame. Okay, we have this guy that's a little bit lower, and his eye line, he's looking up here at him. Okay, and then we have this guy that's back here. And his eye line, he's looking this way. He's looking right at him. Charlton Heston is not looking at him. Charlton Heston is actually looking over at Orson Welles over here. He's looking at him over here. Okay? And Orson Welles is looking on. He's looking out this way. So as far as the story goes, now there's other lines in here, but as far as the eye lines go and closure in here, we have closure in here and moving out to here. So all these guys are grouped together by where they're positioned and where their heads are. Now, as far as the eye lines go, he's got a strong eye line. He's got a strong eye line out here, and he's got a strong eye line here. His is looking almost straight in, so it's not that strong. But the difference is Orson Welles is a crooked cop on the U.S. side of the Mexican border. This guy is a good Mexican cop on the Mexican side of the Mexican border. This guy in the back here is Orson Welles' accomplice. Okay, he's an American cop and his assistant over here. This guy is the guy that's actually being framed. And this is the guy who's framing him. So you can see how the intensity of the moment, the way they're positioned, but Charlton Heston is suspicious of him and he's looking on. He's totally guilty in this situation. Totally guilty. And you get the whole story, okay? And you get the story because of where they're positioned and their eye lines and what they're doing in there. We also have other other lines in here, like the turning of planes, up here and back here. The walls painted very dark back there, so it creates a tonal contrast back in there. So windows with blinds going this way, blinds going this way. This sets up some texture in the backgrounds there. There's also a shading on here, a tonal contrast, right? That keeps your eye up in here. He's creating a strong tonal contrast of light over dark and dark over light, where he's providing really strong contrast in this. Like that. So there's strong tonal contrast that comes along with this. Okay? This is actually, this isn't Robert Fawcett, this is actually Albert Dorn. And you can see in this image by Al Dorn, look at all the eye lines and all the directional things that he put into this illustration. Okay, this one appears like this actor character. Cowboy punched the other guy, and all the onlookers, all the seconds, and you can see, all of their eye lines are looking over towards the action. Some of them are looking down at the guy on the ground. Some of them are looking at the guy who punched him. And you can see all the directional axis of the guy who punched him. The axis of the guy laying on the ground leads you into the picture. And so a lot of these, his foot, from his foot into his figure, there's a strong line going in because it's going the axis up his leg. And the guy that punched him is framing the whole scene. I think I have another. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so this might be a little easier to see and perceive. You can see all these eye lines that are working across this illustration. Okay? And you can see that these eye lines are really powerful. You see the directional axis of the characters and stuff. Those are secondary lines as well. But you're going to see that these eye lines are really, really strong. And the axes of all of these other characters are powerful as well. They are used as framing elements. The foreground arm, the guy's legs, and folds in his fabric too, in his pants. Those all work to direct your eye and move your eye. So there's so much about this image that is really put in here to move your eye, predominantly just to move your eye. And that's very important. These are just some images that I just snagged from the internet that have strong lines as well. So I can kind of run through some of those. Okay. So we have her axis, and then the pillars in the back create really the most dynamic lines because they're most strong angles. We have closure between the lights or speakers or whatever those are, and then these horizontal lines of the bleachers. Here's another photo that has a lot of lines. The steps, the wires down below, her axis. There's the stairs going up at an angle kind of frame her as well. So that gives a little bit more dominance to accentuate her in this image. Back to Superman. I grabbed a bunch of images from this. You can see in this image we've got this is our Lex Luthor character. Take a look at the ice crystals, or these crystals in this location or this set. They're all working at these almost 90-degree angles, but they're all like 45-degree angles, and everything is these angles. Let me just show you on here if I draw this. This is really what's going on in here. We have Lex Luthor here like this, and he's right in the middle, very symmetrical like this. His tie comes down like this. And here's the story. He's holding on to this cross, all right? He's just looking up above here, right? He's not even looking at it, really. So we have this cross right here, very strong graphic symbol in here like this. This little element here, this little crystal that he's got in this area is all of Superman's knowledge, okay? So if we take a look at it that way, you know, he's creating this in this big cross, and his lapels come down and help frame all of this. The dark of his shirt comes down and helps frame all this. So these are all accenting this vertical and horizontal quality here. You know, even frontal like this with the folds on his coat, all these things go to kind of swirl your eye around here, all these lines, where the environment back here is all so if I can have right angles, but if they're turned at an angle like this, you know, or if things are coming out like this and then things are coming out like this, I have these, even though they're right angles, they're all at this axis, this 45-degree axis, one way or the other. And then I give you one that's centered right in the middle and very different. This is a difference. This is a contrast of line, okay? Or contrast of axes. So all of these are going this way, and then this is the only one going that way. It makes it pretty strong, okay? It makes it a real strong graphic statement. Now, if I wanted to make it a little bit more chaotic, the fact that the background angles are almost 90 degrees, and then the cross in the middle is 90 degrees. If I want to exaggerate that, I could make the background a bit more chaotic. If those crystals were moving at different angles, it would become more chaotic compared to something more stable. So the cross in the middle is stable, the background would be more chaotic. So that's just a range that you could play with observation. I would suggest this with any of the images, or look at images, look at paintings, look at film, look at anything you're interested, and look for these lines. Okay, and the whole idea here is start to identify. If you can start to look at them and see them in images and identify them, they're there in many images. Some are designed in really well, some aren't. But if you see where they are and you look at them on how they affect the work, whether it's an eye line, whether it's a physical line or an implied line, whether it's a contour line, or whether it's a line created by tonal contrast or converging planes, all these things are potential lines, okay? And if you look for those things in different images, you'll see them and you can see, are they making this image stronger, or are they bringing my focus to these certain areas, okay? And this is what I would call a visual assessment, and that's one of the things that you want to really develop. There's observation skills that you're going to do when you're drawing the figure or drawing from life. There's observation skills, but there's also visual assessment skills that you need to acquire. And those are skills breaking down images. So the difficult thing is what do you look for when you want to break down images? And that's a complicated thing. But if you look at your 7 components and the characteristics of those components, look at any image and look at those components. Think of those components. Have the little list right next to you and look at those components and see what's working, what's not working. Or if you see an image you like, ask yourself, why are you compelled to look at that image? And then look at your list of components and see. And you'll see that some of those things are at work in the image. And those are the things that are drawing you in. Okay? So you want to be able to recognize these components in images that are compelling. And when you start seeing them over and over, you see how they're used, and over a little bit of time, you can start using them yourself. And you'll start knowing when you're drawing something, if it goes a little off, what can you use to correct those drawings or make those drawings work for you?